Good morning. Yesterday, we have started with the shear stress. I explain you what is the shear force. Actually, shear force is the force which acts tangential to the resisting area. Or when the force acts tangential to the plane is known as a shear force. And that force is resisted by some area. That area which resists that shear force is known as a resisting area. Yesterday, some student asked me the doubt about the resisting area. Sir, exactly what is in the resisting area? Okay. So first, initially, I will start with that. What is meant by exactly the resisting area? So resisting area is nothing but the area which resists the applied force. Initially, I told you that the stress is nothing but the resisting force upon area. Okay. So this area is nothing but the area on which this resisting force is at or induced, you can say. The area on which this resisting force induced, that area is known as the resisting area. For example, suppose if I consider one circular rod, consider this circular rod which is subjected to some axial force. Here, because of this axial force, it will deform. But this material resists that deformation. And at the intramolecular level, one force of resistance is induced. Here, so if I take the section, yes, so on this area, this intermolecular force of attraction is induced, which resists this deformation. Okay, so this is the resisting force, and the area on which this force is induced, that is known as a resisting area. Okay, for example, suppose if I want to design one bench, these four legs are there. Okay, I have designed it for suppose 1000 Newton. I designed it for the 1000 Newton. This is the load applied. Accordingly, I have considered the cross section area of this, because in this case, here this load is applied on each leg in the axial form. Okay, so corresponding to this load, I have considered some cross sectional area of this leg. Here, if it is a circular one, hollow circular one, here, then this cross sectional area I have decided or I have selected. Okay. Now, let's consider instead of 1000, I have to design the bench for 10,000 Newton force. Load increases. Here, क्या करेंगे आप लोग? ये सेम क्रॉस सेक्शनल एरिया, ये सेम एरिया चलेगा क्या यहाँ पे? Unmute yourself and tell me. With the same area, will it do? If I apply the 10,000 Newton load instead of 1000, actually it was designed for 1000 only, but if I apply the 10,000 Newton force here with the same area, okay, what will happen? ये bend हो जाएगा, break हो जाएगा, fail हो जाएगा. Why? Because the cross sectional area है, here it is very less to resist this 10,000 Newton force. Okay, so here this is the area which we are concerning. Here, this area is known as a resisting area which resists this force. Here, in this case, the surface area doesn't make any difference. Yes, ऐसा नहीं है कि if you apply the, suppose if you design it for 1000 Newton, it is having some cross sectional area A. If you apply the 10,000 Newton force here, and if you use the same cross sectional area, but if you say that, sir, I will increase the length by 1 meter, I'll increase the length by 1 meter. Okay, because of increasing the length, the surface area will increase. Yes, but then also it can't sustain this 10,000 Newton, because to sustain this 10,000 Newton, the resisting area is this cross sectional area. Increase the cross sectional area, because in that case the cross sectional area is the resisting area. Whereas in this case, here when we punch a hole in a metal sheet with the help of this punch. Okay, here the force acting on the punch is act as a tangential force on this plate. Okay, Here, just observe the punch, how the punch apply the force on the paper when you make the hole in the paper. Yeah, just observe. Okay, so it is applying the force tangentially to that surface where it gets cut. Okay, so in this case, this area which is being cut is the resisting area. Here, and same thing happen if you want to punch the hole. Here, if less number of papers are there, by applying the manual force, you can easily punch the hole. But if the number of papers are more, and if you apply the same force, here you cannot punch. Why? What's the reason? Because in this case, the resisting area is increases here, and that's why the force which we are applying is not sufficient to make the hole, to fail this material. That force is insufficient. Okay, so in this case, the force which we are applying is resisted by this area. Here it is not the cross-sectional area. The force applied for shearing failure, this cross-sectional area is not the resisting area. Here for shearing failure, or for considering it as a shearing force, this surface area is the resisting area. It is the area which resists the given force. Here that is known as the resisting area. Okay, I hope that it is clear. Okay, when we'll solve few more sums, here it will more clear to you. Here read some literature about that. Okay, if you have any doubt, you can ask me there. Okay, so yesterday we have started with the shear force. Shear force is a tangential force acting on that. Shearing area, sorry, in this case the shearing area is this surface area which is equal to pi dt, and shear stress, which is denoted by Q or tau, is the shearing force upon the shearing area, resisting area, shearing area it is known as. It is the area along which the actual shearing takes place. That is known as the shearing area. Here I had given you the example of two metal sheet which we joined with the rivet, and if I apply the force here, so these forces are acting tangentially on this cross section of the rivet, so which become the shear force for this, okay, for this area. So here this is the area which is under shear. Here the plane is moving tangentially against each other. That process is known as a shearing process. Here, so this area is under shear, or you can see it as a resisting area which resists this force. Okay, if you increase the area, it will not fail. If you reduce the area, easily it will fail. Okay, so that area is known as a resisting area which resists the applied force. Here, so shearing stress is nothing but a shear force upon shearing area. Here, then shear strain is nothing but an angular deformation. Okay, and shear strain is denoted phi, and the modulus of rigidity is one of the property of the material, and it is given that it is the within elastic limit, the ratio of shear stress to the shear strain is known as the modulus of rigidity, which is denoted by G or C. Okay, now based on this shear stress and shear force, we will solve two questions only, because here it is not that important. Just a concept is important about the shear force and all these things. But one special lesson is there to find out the shear stresses for the beam. In that case, at the time, we'll study detail about the shear stresses. Okay. Now, I'm taking the question from a question bank. Okay. Before that, I'll take one question from the book. That question is not in the question bank. Very simple question. I want to make you clear some few points. Otherwise, question is very simple. Okay. One more task I am assigning to you people. Just search on a Google and just learn about the complementary shear. Complementary shear. Here you have to Google this and read the literature about the complementary shear. What is the complementary shear? We don't require in this lesson, so I'm not going to explain you this right now. Here, when it is required in principal planes and stresses, at that time I will explain you this thing. But this is the additional reading for you people. You have to read about the complementary shear. Okay, just put in the Google, you will get the answer. Complementary shear. Okay. These are the two metal sheets and one rivet. Let's consider same question. And force P is applied here. This is the rivet which join this plate. It is given that find the force P. You have to find out the force P, which would shear the rivet of 16 millimeter diameter. You have to find out the force P required to shear the rivet. Okay. Of 16 millimeter diameter. Diameter of the rivet is 16 millimeter. Take ultimate shear stress for the rivet. Ultimate shear stress. It is ultimate, maximum shear stress. Ultimate shear stress for the rivet is 360 Newton per millimeter square. And the factor of safety is 3. Okay. Factor of safety is given as a 3. And you have to find out the force P required to shear off this rivet. Here listen once again. इसके पहले हमने जो क्वेश्चन सॉल्व किया था उसमें ये पूछा था कि फाइंड आउट द सेफ फोर्स P applied. Okay, now when you want to find out the safe force P applied at that time, we know that the stress equal to P upon A. Okay, when you want to find out the safe force P, the stress should also be the safe stress or vice versa. Actually, this is the induced stress because of this applied force P. So we know that the induced stress should be always within the permissible limit or allowable stress. Understood? Here, so if we want to calculate the force P, safe force P, the value of the stress should also be the safe stress. How we can get the safe stress? So here also we can use the same formula. The safe shear stress is equal to ultimate shear stress upon the factor of safety. It is 120 Newton per millimeter square. So this is the safe stress, shear stress induced in the rivet. If this much stress is induced by applying the force P, the rivet will not fail. Here it will be safe. Okay. Here, लेकिन ये क्वेश्चन में हम लोगों को क्या फाइंड आउट करने का है? We cannot find out this force P required by using this value of the stress, even though the factor of safety is given. If you use this value of 120, here this is equal to P upon A. If you use this 120 over here, you will get the safe force P which will not break the rivet. क्वेश्चन में ये पूछा है कि फाइंड आउट द फोर्स P रिक्वायर्ड टू ब्रेक द रिवेट, टू शेयर द रिवेट. हम लोगों को फेल करने का रिवेट को, रिवेट को फेल करने के लिए कितना फोर्स लगेगा, दैट फोर्स वी हैव टू कैलकुलेट फर्स्ट. ओके, एंड सिंस वी आर shearing the rivet, here it is the process of failuring the rivet, and since it is a failure, you have to take the ultimate stress here. So to calculate the maximum force P required to shear off the rivet, here the force required to shear off the rivet is equal to, it is the ultimate stress into the resisting area, or I can see it as a shearing area. Shearing area, because it is a shear stress. Okay, so is that clear? Here why I am using the ultimate stress and why not safe stress? It is 360 into how much is the shearing area for the rivet. Here because of this applied force, here the rivet will get shear off like this. So this is the area under shear which is equal to the cross sectional area. So it is pi by 4 into d square. Here d is known to you, substitute that, you will get the force. This much force P is required to shear of the rivet. If I use 120, you will get one value of the force P, but that will be the safe force P. That won't be the force P required to shear of the rivet. Understood? So read the question carefully. What you have to find out, that you have to read carefully, and accordingly you have to use the value of the stress. Okay. So how much is the answer here? Diameter is given 16 millimeters. Substitute that and get the answer of the force P. This is the force P required to shear of the rivet. Here, and second part is given that find the safe maximum force that the rivet can carry. This is the force P. कितना आता है? Tell me the answer. Substitute D equal to 16.
Sir, 72.34. 72.32.
72.38 Newton. Okay, so this much force is required. Yes. Is it Newton or kilonewton?
Sir, it is kilonewton. It was in kilonewton.
It is kilonewton. Okay, fine. So this much force P is required to shear off the rivet. Okay. So second part, we have to find out the safe force P that the rivet can carry. So for safe force, we have to take the safe stress into area, resisting area, or the area under shear. Okay, so which is equal to safe stress is 120 by considering the factor of safety of 3. So it is 120 into area is pi by 4 into d square. Substitute the value and get the answer of force P. Okay, tell me how much is that? Is it 24?
Yes, sir. 24.12
Yes,
kilonewton.
sir. 24.127 kilonewton.
12. Okay, fine. If you divide it by 3, you will get the answer. Okay. So safe force is 24.1 kilonewton. This is the safe. This is the force P at which the rivet will break. Yes, so you have to read the question. So for breaking or for failuring the material, we need a ultimate stress. We have to calculate the safe force P, we require the safe stress. Okay. Understood this concept? Here. So the next question is from a question bank. In that question bank, in that question there is one plate, metal plate, and in this metal plate we have to make one hole, one circular hole with the help of some punch by applying the force on the punch. Okay. Question is that estimate the force required to punch out a circular hole of 60 millimeter diameter. The diameter of the hole is 60 millimeter, and you have to find out the force P required to punch this hole through a 2 millimeter thick plate. The thickness of the plate is given as 2 millimeter. So you have to find out how much force P is required to punch a hole of 60 millimeter diameter through a plate of 2 millimeter. Now again here, in this question it is not given, but if ultimate shear stress is given, ultimate shear stress for the plate is 300 Newton per millimeter square, and factor of safety is 3. This is given. You have to calculate the force P required to punch the hole. Ultimate stress is given, sorry, it is the ultimate shear stress, and factor of safety is given. Now tell me, in this question, to find out this force P, here is it necessary to calculate the safe stress? Is it necessary to calculate the safe stress? We can calculate the safe stress. It is the ultimate stress upon factor of safety, 300 divided by 3, which is equal to 100. But is it necessary to calculate this force P? Here, with the help of this stress, if you calculate the force P, that will become the safe stress, safe force P, which we can apply here without failure. With the help of that force, here we cannot punch. We cannot make the circular hole in that plate. Okay, so no need to calculate the shape stress here. Since we have to make the hole, means we have to fail the material, and to fail the material we have to consider the ultimate stress. Understood? One thing. Next thing. Now in this question, what will be the area under shear? कौन से एरिया पे शेयरिंग फेलियर हो रहा है? या सो एरिया अंडर शेयर इज दिस सरफेस एरिया ऑफ द होल, या नॉट द क्रॉस सेक्शनल एरिया. It is a surface area. This is the area along which the shearing takes place. That area we have to take here, which is equal to pi d into thickness t. Here, this is the area. If I just show the part which will come out of that plate, such type of cylindrical part will be there, and this is the area under shear. Because of this punch, the material will get shear off along this surface, whose area under shear is pi dt. Okay, here, so we have to calculate how much force P is required to punch the hole. So we can calculate the shear force. Actually, this force which you are applying on the punch, so on the punch it is a compressive in nature, whereas on the plate it is the shear force. It is acting tangentially to the surface. Okay, so force required is equal to, it is the ultimate stress into the area under shear. Okay, now which is equal to, how much is ultimate stress? It is 300, and how much is the area under shear? It is pi dt, which is equal to 300 into pi into diameter is 60 and thickness is 2 millimeter. Calculate this. This much amount of force is required to punch the hole. Answer. One 113.09 kilonewton.
Yes, sir. 1130.3.097
kilonewton.
Yes.
This much force is required to punch the hole. If you apply the force less than that, here we cannot punch the hole. Here, this much force is required to fail this plate because of the shear. Understood this? Okay. Now, directly if you take the blunt punch and if you apply the force, here it is not possible even with this force also. Here, so you require to make a such type of design so that this much force is applied tangentially to that shearing area. Understood? Okay. So this is all about the shear force. Here, the next part which we have to study is the lateral strain. Lateral strain, E lateral. Okay, now what is the lateral strain? Listen carefully. Let's consider, suppose, okay, I'll consider it as a rectangular cross section. Consider this rod of length L, which is subjected to some axial tensile force P, and the cross section of this is a rectangular one. Let this is the breadth B and this is the depth D. Or you can say thickness. L is the length. Okay. Now up till now we know that here when the force P is applied, axial force P is applied, here there will be the linear deformation of this material. We used to denote this as a delta L. Okay, and we know that till now we have defined as the strain is a change in dimension to the original dimension. And we have considered only the length. Here, till now we have written that the strain is equal to delta L upon L. Here, but remember one thing here, this length is a dimension along the force P applied. Force P is applied along the x direction, let's say. So this length, this dimension is in the direction of the applied force. Such type of dimension is known as a linear or linear dimension. linear or longitudinal dimension. Okay, and corresponding strain is known as the linear strain or the longitudinal strain. Okay, so this delta L upon L, this is a change in linear dimension to the original linear dimension. So corresponding strain is known as the linear strain or the longitudinal strain. Okay, so now till now we used to say only strain, but now we have to be specific. It is the linear strain or the lateral strain. Okay, so what is the linear strain? Linear strain is nothing but a change in linear dimension to the original linear dimension. The question is, what is the linear dimension? So linear dimensions are nothing but the dimensions in the direction of the applied force. Okay, the dimension is known as the lateral dimension. Whereas, so for example, if you consider this cross-sectional area, the force applied is perpendicular to this cross-sectional area. It is normal. Okay, the force applied over here like this. This is the line of action of the force. Now this B and D, these are the dimensions which are perpendicular to the line of action of the force. Here, they are in the plane which are perpendicular to the dimension line of action of the force. Here, and first type of dimensions are known as the lateral dimension. These are known as the lateral dimension. Yeah, so first let's make it clear what is by linear dimension and lateral dimension. Linear or longitudinal dimension are the dimension along the applied force. Lateral dimension are the dimension which are perpendicular to the applied force. Here it is a rectangular, so lateral dimensions are B and D. If it would have been a circular, then this diameter is a lateral dimension. Okay. Now when we apply any axial force here, then the linear dimension will change because of this axial force. And a change in linear dimension, let it is delta L. So we can say that the linear strain is equal to delta L upon L. This is known as a linear strain. Yeah, but let me tell you one thing. Whenever there is a linear strain, this linear strain is always associated with the lateral strain. Yeah, जब ये linear dimension change होता है because of this applied force P. Here, this force P itself is responsible, or because of that force P itself, the lateral dimensions are also changes. Okay, here is when we apply the force. When we apply the force, सिर्फ length increase नहीं होता है. Here, along with that increase in the length, here इसका जो lateral dimension है वो भी change होगा, वो decrease होगा. Okay, here so we can say that this lateral strain is always associated with the linear strain. Whenever there is a linear strain, there has to be some lateral strain. If there is a change in linear dimension, lateral dimension has to be changed. Okay, here so if I apply this external applied force is tensile, then there will be an increase in the linear dimension here, and this linear strain is tensile in nature because this is the increase in length. I told you that this linear strain is, or sorry, lateral, because of this applied force P, the lateral dimensions will also be changed, and hence there will be the lateral strain also. This lateral strain is always associated with the linear strain here. So let's consider these are the new dimension of this rod, and here the applied force is tensile. Because of that, the length will increase, but because of the increase in length, the lateral dimensions will get decreased. Here, so this the rectangle which is shown by the dotted line. This is the final B and D of this material after applying the force P. So let delta D is the change in depth and delta B is the change in breadth because of this force P. Okay, here, and these are the change in lateral dimension. So the ratio of change in lateral dimension to the original lateral dimension here is known as a lateral strain. Okay, so we can write here delta D upon D, or you can write delta B upon B, both will remain same. Yeah, so lateral strain is nothing but a change in lateral dimension to the original lateral dimension. Here, linear strain is, or lateral strain is always associated with the linear strain. If there is a linear strain, there has to be lateral strain. If there is a change in linear dimension, there has to be the change in lateral dimension. Okay, and these two strains are opposite in nature. If this is tensile in nature, this has to be compressive. If this linear dimension increases, the lateral dimension has to be decreased. They are always opposite to each other. Understood? Here, so this is about the linear strain and lateral strain. In simple word, we can say that what is lateral strain? It is the strain in the lateral direction. It is the strain perpendicular to the direction of the applied force. Okay, that is known as a lateral strain. Okay, if this linear strain is in the x direction, if I consider this as the x direction, if I consider this as the x direction, then this will become y direction and this becomes z direction. Here, so you can say that this linear strain is nothing but a strain in x direction, so which is equal to delta L upon L. And this you can say that EY and EZ, strain, lateral strain in y and z direction. Okay. So linear strain is a strain in the direction of the applied force. Lateral strain is a strain in the direction perpendicular to the applied force. Both are opposite in nature. If one is a tensile, other one is compressive, and both are always associated with each other. Understood? Okay. Now, this linear strain and lateral strain are not independent to each other. Here, they are related to each other, and the ratio of lateral strain to the linear strain, the ratio of lateral strain to the linear strain is known as the Poisson's ratio, which is denoted by 1 upon m or which is denoted by mu. Here it is known as the Poisson's ratio. Again, this is one of the elastic constant, Poisson's ratio. It is denoted by 1 upon m or mu. How can you define it? It is the ratio of lateral strain to the linear strain. Okay, linear strain value is always greater than the lateral strain because the force is applied directly in that particular direction. Here, so linear strain is always greater than lateral strain, and the value of Poisson's ratio is valid, sorry, it varies from 0.1 to 0.5. It will not greater than 0.5. Okay, here, so 1 upon m or Poisson's ratio is lateral strain upon linear strain. Listen, Poisson's ratio we are going to denote by 1 upon m only. Here, before this I told you that you can denote the m for the modular ratio, okay, which is the ratio of two modulus of elasticity, modular ratio. Okay, there is no relation between these two. Okay, so better I will suggest use mu for the Poisson's ratio. But sometimes in the exam also 1 upon m is given, so don't get confused. 1 upon m is the Poisson's ratio, and there is no relation between the Poisson's ratio and the modular ratio. Okay, Poisson's ratio is the lateral strain upon linear strain. These two strains are always opposite in nature. Clear? So we can say that the lateral strain is equal to Poisson's ratio into linear strain. And if you use the sign convention for the strain, if it is a tensile in nature, if you use positive, and if you consider it as a compressive, and if you consider it as a negative, then these two strains are always opposite in nature, so you can use the negative sign here also. Means if the linear strain is tensile, and if you take it positive, because of this negative sign, lateral strain का answer आपका negative ही आएगा. Here, and that negative sign indicate that it is a compressive in nature. Here, but नहीं use किया तो भी चलेगा. E lateral equal to mu into E linear, you will get the numerical value here, and about the nature, whether it is tensile or compressive, that you can think logically also. Okay, so Poisson's ratio is the ratio of lateral strain to the linear strain. Okay, now next one, now it is important, this Poisson's ratio. Here, its value varies from 0.1 to 0.5. It cannot be greater than 0.5. Okay. The next one is the volumetric strain.
Sir? Sir, 0.1 to 0.5 is for all materials?
Yes. It varies. It is a property of the material. It varies from material to material, but it cannot be greater than 0.5. ये 0.1 से less हो सकता है, but it cannot be greater than 0.5. Okay, it cannot be greater than 0.5. Here, now today's second task for you people. यार पहले बोला था मैंने क्या रीडिंग करने का आज. What was that? क्या बोला था मैंने आपको रीडिंग के लिए आज?
Complementary strain.
Complementary shear. Complementary shear. Okay, complementary strain नहीं, complementary shear. Now second, I search कर लो कि what is the maximum value of the Poisson's ratio, or why Poisson's ratio cannot be greater than 0.5. Okay, I'll ask you in the oral. Why Poisson's ratio will not be greater than 0.5, or what is the maximum value of the Poisson's ratio? Okay. Now, the next one is a volumetric strain, which is denoted by E suffix V. Now, if I consider, suppose this is one cuboid. Let this is L, let this is B, and let this is T. T लिखो, D लिखो, one and the same thing. T means thickness, D means depth. Yeah. Now, when it is subjected to some load, I am considering the unidirectional loading only. If the load is acting only in one direction, it is known as a unidirectional. If the load is applied in both the direction, X and Y direction, then it is known as biaxial. If the load is applied on all the three directions, X, Y, and Z, then it is known as the triaxial loading. Okay. If some submarine is there, here which is inside the water pressure are exerted in all the directions. Okay, so that becomes the triaxial loading. Okay, so consider this uniaxial loading. L is length is L, breadth is B, and T is the thickness. Now we know that when the force is applied in even in one direction, here there will be the strain in X direction. There is a strain in length. There is a linear strain as well as there are lateral strain also. And because of this linear and lateral strain, here the volume of the material changes. Okay, so this volumetric strain is defined as the change in volume to the original volume. Understood? Here the volume will change. Here because of this force, here there is a strain in X, Y, and Z direction. There is a strain, linear strain as well as in lateral strain. And because of that strain, the volume changes. This is a change in volume because of this applied force. Then this ratio of change in volume to the original volume is known as a volumetric strain. So how can you define the volumetric strain? It is a change in volume to the original volume. Okay, here now in this case, if I consider, suppose this is the X direction, this is Y, and let this is Z, X, Y, and Z. Okay, now we know that the volume of this cuboid, here it becomes L, B into T. This is the volume of the cuboid. Let's differentiate it partially. If I differentiate it partially, then delta V equal to, here it is delta L into B into T. Three functions are there, all are the variables. Here, so plus delta B into L into T plus it is delta T into L into B. Okay. Now, if I divide the equation by original volume, here so it becomes delta V upon V, which is equal to, or this on right hand side, this delta L into B into T plus delta B into L into T plus delta T into L into B upon divided by volume, and volume I am taking equal to LBT. If you simplify this, here this is plus, this is plus. If you take it, if you separate it, then BT get cancelled and you will get delta L upon L, plus here LT get cancelled and you will get delta B upon B, and here L and B get cancelled, you will get delta T upon T. Okay, now we know that the change in volume upon original volume gives you the volumetric strain, and delta L upon L is the strain in X direction. So instead of denoting it as a EL, here I am denoting it as a EX. Then delta B upon B is the strain in Z direction, so it is plus EZ, and is delta T upon T. T is the dimension along the y-axis, so this is become the strain in Y direction. Yeah. So this volumetric strain, whose basic formula is change in volume to the original volume. Here, but how can we calculate this volumetric strain? you can calculate the separately the strain in x direction plus strain in y direction plus strain in z direction. So summation of the strain in x, y and z direction gives you the volumetric strain. Okay, if you, because of this force P, if you calculate the strain in x direction, yes, how much is the strain in x direction, which is equal to delta L upon L. Here, because of this force P, what is the strain in y direction? You can write this delta y equal to delta T upon T. Yeah, but what is the, how can you calculate this delta T upon T or EY? Now, with respect to this force P, this delta T upon T or strain in y direction becomes the lateral strain. Force is acting in the x direction. So, because of this force P, the strain in y direction becomes the lateral strain. And this lateral strain can be written as mu into linear strain. Means here I can write down this EY equal to mu into, for this case, what is the linear strain? Here it is EX or it is delta L upon L. In this we can calculate the strain in y direction. Here it is EY equal to mu into EX. Because of this force P, EX is the linear strain. And EY is also the strain because of this force P only. But this is the strain in y direction because of the force P, which is acting in along the x direction. So this becomes the lateral strain, which we can write EY equal to mu into EX. Similarly, I can write down EZ equal to mu into EY. Mu is the Poisson's ratio. Here, and if I calculate all these strain here, and if I substitute, we'll get the volumetric strain. Here, with the help of this volumetric strain, if you know the volumetric strain, with the help of this volumetric strain, you can calculate the change in volume. How much volume can be changed because of this applied force. Understood? Here, so just remember the volumetric strain equal to EX plus EY plus EZ. This is the resultant strain in x direction, resultant strain in y direction, and resultant strain in z direction. Here, if I substitute this value of EX, EY, and EZ in this equation, you can write this volumetric strain. You can get the formula for this volumetric strain. Here, how to calculate the volumetric strain for the triaxial loading? Here, we'll study it in the next lecture. Here, for today, it is enough. Here, if you have any doubt, you can ask. Any doubt?
Sir, can you explain again that why the Poisson's ratio is between 0.1 and 0.5?
That I told you now. Today you search why the Poisson's ratio 0.1 to 0.5. Let's write it as 0 to 0.5. Okay. The question should be why it is not greater than 0.5.
Okay.
Here, why it is not greater than 0.5. It can be less than 0.1 also. But for most of the material which we are commonly used, it is from 0.1 to 0.5. Okay, you have to search why it is not greater than 0.5. That is your today's task.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and don't leave. Here, let me mark your attendance. Who is there? Vipul Prajapati. Don't leave. Don't leave. Just wait for 2 minutes.